doing it for you, Mark.
Gee, thank you.
Anachronic.
So you probably caught Matt Woods saying something because I was fooling around with the numbers. Welcome, everybody, to episode 29. That's a 2 and a 9. Episode 29 of the Comic Book Crowd. All right. And we've got
fingers and toes, Joe.
Well, you know what? I'm pretty soon we're going to get to that point. We're all going to have to put up our fingers so we can get enough up there. So, so tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about, starting to read comics, comic book collecting, trying to be a newbie, or you want to get back into it. You know, what suggestions do we have? Because we're all so attuned to the hobby, and I've all gone through this probably multiple times for some of us. So I think it might be something good to know. Yeah, Matt was a teenager. Yeah, he looks like he's should be part of the Bowery Boys, don't you think?
Wow, now that's dating yourself.
New York City history.
Yeah. What you guys talking about? Hey. So anyway, so I want to thank.
We're gonna meet up at 5 points, okay?
Right. Well, you know what? You just got to do what you got to do, right? So to my left, we have Alan climbing comics. How you doing tonight, Alan?
Good. Happy to be here for number, you said what, 29?
29. He's one of the OGs. The other OG is Mr. Matt Woods of Matt Woods Comics and the Bowery Boys. How you doing tonight, Matt?
You know, I am doing great, and I have a mission tonight, Joe. My partner over here, he can't stand the sideways hat. So guess what? I'm wearing it. All right, Mark? You can't do anything about it.
I can't.
All right. I think he just handcuffed me. Okay.
We had a little bit of a hat challenge before we began, So that was going to be that turned into something a little interesting.
Hey, Mark has a pretty cool hat.
It is cool. And so we have now Mark Andrews is now up on the upper level. How are you, Matt?
Evening, Joe. Happy to be here.
How cold is it up there, Mark? Is it
heck,
cold?
it was 19 degrees this afternoon.
Oh, boy.
He's talking Celsius too.
It's Celsius. So but it's we're gonna have 3 days of rain, and there's flood warnings everywhere, and they're sandbagging along Lake Nipissing. It's great.
Fun times.
Fun times.
And here's Philtastic, who couldn't find the link.
Yeah. That's
Sorry,
not me. Joe sent the link, everybody. It just too many messages today.
Forgot to look for it.
I hear you.
So popular, Phil. So popular.
Yeah. Well, before we get started with this, I just can't wait to get started with this, which it's just going to be so good. Anyway, let's see who's here with us. So there's Tina. Are we back at the top of the hour? So hopefully she's here again. Hey, Tina, the OG. Steve White.
The voice.
Mark, cohort in crime up there at the Toronto Comic Con.
Occasionally.
Spinetix, yeah. How you doing tonight? Sith Lordly. We have Chuck. Chuck is listening to WWOZ, streaming in the background. Recorded the Jazz Fest today.
Nice.
So Chuck, thank you for being here. Appreciate it, my friend. Appreciate it. All right, who else do we have here? We have Dave Bratton. Thank you, Dave, for showing up.
The better looking of the Bratton brothers. I just want
that's. Yeah. Oh no, nobody said Matt Woods Comics was going to be here. Jackson Roykirk.
Oh no, nobody said Jackson Roykirk was going to be here either.
We kind of anticipated that Matt would be here since he's been here for every episode.
30.
Matt's 30 never left.
Yeah. Well, Jackson, great to see you.
They've tried to get rid of me.
Brad, how you doing tonight? Well, Bor, good to see you, my friend. Who else? We have anybody else here? There, we said hello to him already. X11 Bravo, been a while. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. Thank you for showing up.
I was just talking to that man.
Were you?
Yeah.
Actually, Mike, Evil's
Evil
Comics.
Mike.
Thank you, Mike,
Evil
for
Mike.
showing up. We'd like to see
Evening.
our friends here. We'd like to see our friends here.
Let's see, Mike.
Yeah, and I catch now and then, some of that Dark Tower stuff, but it goes on for like 25 hours, so I can't watch the whole thing. But I read the series, and you're bringing it back to me. I feel like when I get back to New York, I want to start reading it again. Oh no, Randy was Snake. How you
Holy
been?
moly.
Oh, been a while.
Matt is looking for his.
Yeah, I was.
Mine is in New York. Hurry up, Matt. Hurry up. He's got to go back to work. He can only stop by for a minute.
Oh, I got it. Don't worry. Oh, wait, somewhere. The day I'm trying to get it quick.
Hurry up. Tick, 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 tick.
Oh, there.
Ah,
There. Whoa,
There
that
it
is
is.
so
Awesome.
fantastic.
love
Randy is
that.
such a talented artist. Look at that. Look at that.
Randy was Snake.
Amazing.
Talented artist. He did
Right.
great.
Matt Conan
Yeah,
does
he did a
favorite.
JLA for me, which is really fantastic. Really fantastic. All right, who else do we have here? Anybody else? All right.
I saw a Canadian survivalist in here.
Did you? All right, let me see if I can get to him. Steve
Milt
Grant-
Miller's
there he is.
there.
Canadian
Yeah,
survivalist.
There you go.
Let's go to his fellow Canadian. We got Canadians all over the place here. God.
There's so many great people from Canada, and a lot of them are here in the chat. And then we have Mark.
I was waiting for that. Yeah.
Hey, Milt.
Hey, Milt.
How are you, Milt? Good to see you here, Milt. All right, I think we've gotten to the end, and anybody else shows up, we'll wave to him and everything. And so, let's start off just with some general talk here, right? And thank you, Alan. So what I think now, comic books are amazing for so many different reasons, right? Because they allow us to escape from reality. We've talked about that before, sometimes into a worse non-reality, but sometimes it's good. You can get involved with the stories, great artists, great artwork. Under the right circumstances, they could even be an investment if that's where you're going with this, right?
Mhm.
But essentially, I think for most all of us here, it's entertainment, right? It's good entertainment. So, and now you've got, with the movies coming out, the MCU, obviously, now you got the new DCU coming out. There's a lot of talk about the new Superman movie coming out in 2025 and the other movies coming out. So there are a lot of people who've looked at these things, like the movies, for example, or the TV shows like Lois and Clark or the X-Men 97 show that's out now, which is really, really terrific. And they're saying, gee, I like these things. It's great, but where did they come from? Comic books. So, I'd like to get into some of these things, but I don't know what to do. Or you got someone who's been away for a long time, right? Like many of us have been. I was for a long time. And when I wanted to get back into it, didn't know what to do. I was trying all different things, but I wish I had one of you guys around to say, hey, check out this or do it this way. But we didn't. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to kind of try to give some advice based on our experiences. And maybe as we go along or towards the end, if not beforehand, we'll give some suggestions as things that people might want to read if they're either new or coming back into the hobby. So let's start off maybe with, some suggestions or anything like that you want to bring out. So anybody want to start us off? No. Okay.
I'll jump in here, Joe. Do you mind?
I just
Go ahead.
assumed Matt was going to
Yeah,
start.
I was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
waiting for Matt to
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always an introduction for Matt.
Yeah.
Incidentally,
So
everybody. You have
I
to know
would
when I
just-
do that and I don't tell somebody, would you start? That means that Matt is going to start.
Well,
exactly.
you know what I do? When people are hesitant, I'm like, I'm ready to get in it. But I don't always want to be the first. But you know what? First off, I'm going to say, please don't mind my voice. There's a little bit of pollen in the air, and it's like my throat's constricted. And it's like every third word comes out of my mouth sounding like Kermit the Frog. So just bear with me tonight. But I will say this. Comic books are such a great medium for people to get into. So many great stories, so many great genres. And that's the thing about it. Not everybody realizes it's not just spandex superheroes. There's all kinds of genres out there. There are horror. There are romance comic books. They were huge back in the 50s. They were probably one of the biggest sellers. there's sci-fi, there's adventure, there's military. Yes, there are superhero. But I'm going to say this. I had a family member within the last year just kind of, talking to me like, hey, you're into comic books. I don't really understand their kids' books. And I'm like, well, you read Stephen King, don't you? And they're like, well, yeah. And they were like, yeah, but it's not a kid's book. I'm like, well, Stephen King writes comic books. And they're like, no, he doesn't. I'm like, no, for real. Stephen King's put out a whole bunch of comic books, especially with his Dark Tower series. And guys, I have honestly probably a couple hundred Stephen King comic books here in a collection. I lent that to my relative. They read these comic books and they were absolutely shocked at how much that they enjoyed them. And guess what my relative does now? They read other comic books, different stories. And if you want to get into comic books, and that's what this show is about, just getting into them, just figure out what type of story you like and then ask somebody, hey, give me a suggestion. And you'll be shocked to know what different types of genres, different types of stories are out there. My question here for the panel, does anyone have a story like that where you introduce somebody to a comic book and they took to it?
Yeah, like almost quite often, because like the fact of people, exactly what you just said. People say, well, they're kiddie books and they're cartoons, and they're not very deep, and then gateway drug, yeah, and then you just you say, well, here, have you looked at this book? Have you looked at that book? What's your interest? Because they just say, well, they're real expensive and they're capes. And you go, well, not really. And you get talking to them, thinking about what's coming on May 4th, next weekend, Free Comic Book Day. And I was at my LCS helping get that organized, and we were bagging and boarding the books and getting them all in adult and teen and under 13. And you look at the variety of material that's out there for everyone to read, all kinds, as you said, all kinds of like crime noir and capes and science fiction and horror and romance and comedy and serious stuff. I mean, the fact that you can read some comic books that actually put you, like, almost bring you to tears because they're so well written. And I know there are some comic books that bring you to tears because they're so poorly written, but
True story. But yeah, and you say, well, what is it that really, like, you get excited about? And that's how I've introduced some people to just simply reading, because they don't want to get into a long novel. They go, hey, well, these are novelettes. These are short stories, easy to read, and they get, and sometimes you're successful and sometimes you're not, but yeah.
I mean, I could tell you that when my wife and I started dating, she had never read a comic. She's not a big comic reader now, don't get me wrong. But every so often, there's something I might throw her way. And she's like, yeah, I like this, I don't. But I had started her with Ms. Marvel, because my wife, just to give you a little background information, she's Armenian, grew up in Istanbul. So she had a very kind of a similar, she's Catholic, but she had a very kind of similar, kind of strict upbringing that I thought would kind of reflected what we see with Kamala. And then from there, she just said, oh, what else do you like reading? I know that she read Origin next and really loved it. But like I said, you're not batting 1,000 necessarily, because you need to know who your audience is.
Yeah, my experience was a little bit different, because my best friend, John, was the first guy that was really involved in comics. I mean, I had seen the George Reeves Superman TV show in repeats, basically, and I loved it, and I knew about Superman. But he was, he basically became my best friend like in second grade or whatever. And he's the one who brought me into comic books, and he's the one that knew about comic books. And he was a big Batman fan back in those days, but then we got into Marvel as well. And so really a lot of what I tasted and a lot of what I went into came from stuff that he told me was good, and that's why in those days, then I expanded into things I liked myself, like the JLA and World's Finest with Superman and Batman. Those are things that I kind of found for myself, but he was the one that introduced me to Spider-Man, to Fantastic Four, to some of the Batman stuff originally, X-Men, Avengers. He was the guy who kind of got me involved in those when they came up there. So I had it from the other time, from the other experience, basically. And then as we grew up, I kind of became kind of a sole proprietor, by myself, when I left. But when I came back, I knew what I liked. And I think you're right. Everybody's correct. That's really the first thing you need to do is like, what really appeals to you? Because of all the genres that are there, whether it's horror or romance or capes or even the classics illustrated that Milt was talking about, there are stories there for everybody to have. So when I came back, I knew what I liked, but I had not known what had transpired with the comic books in the years that I had been gone. And so I was kind of like flapping in the wind, trying to going back to the things that I did like in the past and trying to pick them up and finding out that I didn't like them anymore. I didn't like the stories. I didn't understand them. It was the way the stories were written changed so much that it kind of turned me off to a lot of the titles that I liked quite a bit in the past. So one of the things is to really try to find what you do like, But I'll tell you one other thing too is there's so much there that my feeling is when you do find something you like, whether it's a character, usually it's going to be a character or a group of characters in the beginning. Later on it could be an artist, a writer, that type of thing. But in the beginning, you're going to say, "Jay, I like Batman. I like this." If you like Batman, right? What are you going to buy?
Well,
there's like 250 Batman titles.
Yep.
So one of the things is you got to go beyond that, I think, and really narrow it down when you're starting off. Try a title, maybe. That's one way of doing it. And I've had some other ideas too. I mean, you can go trades and stuff like that, and I have some suggestions later on. But I think you really got to narrow down your focus as a new guy or a new guy coming back, like I was, or else it's like me. I was like going crazy. Then I just started buying a bunch of different things, spending money.
Yeah.
And I'd read like 5-6 issues and go, "This is no good." And I mean, when I think about all the money I wasted, in some ways, I wish there was somebody that said, "No, don't read that X-Men title because it's not really well written, but just try this one," or something like that. So I think going also, as Matt said, to some, what you might consider experts or people that know about it and asking for some guidance is also a really, really good idea.
Definitely. I think I also want to chime in a little bit about like what you guys were talking about before about how first people get in and how you choose what to recommend them, whether it be noir or spandex or mystery. One of the most interesting things and fun questions I've asked a lot of people is, what TV shows do you like? Because I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the media out there is based off of comic books. Like Walking Dead, that has such a huge fan base. That's a very, very big, has a huge fan base. And there's so many spin-offs in the comic versions. Sweet Tooth recently, that's a very different type of storyline. Umbrella Academy, that's like not necessarily spandex, but also powers. Like all of these things, I think people are starting to realize that the source material actually comes from comic books.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like you said, Joe, it's finding like that big bucket of like what you like and then kind of diving in. Wow.
Yeah, pretty fly on this from the airport. I think
I got a Starbucks. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
I got kicked out of my comic room, so now I'll be doing a DC Watch and Comic Cred from a Starbucks.
Nice.
Well, welcome. We just got started. Matt and Mark and Phil and Alan.
Miss you guys.
Good kind of starters.
Nice. I love this topic.
Yeah. So
sorry for being
late. You got some ideas. You want to add something in terms of where to start, how to finding stuff that you love or whatever it happens to be?
Oh, well, this hobby of ours is pretty multifaceted. There's so many aspects to it. There's the collecting, obviously, and the reading, obviously, and there's also the selling, and there's also like the stuff we do on YouTube. So maybe I recommend newbies to just explore. Explore like the kind of books you want to read. Explore, because are you going to be a seller, or are you going to be just a collector, just a reader? Like I said, so it's multifaceted. That the sooner you can identify what kind of collector you're going to be, I think the better. Because, like, for example, like, if you're not into like selling books, then there's really no need to get multiple copies, right? Or try to get that hottest book, or fall into FOMO. There's no need for that if you're just a reader, right?
Yeah.
Or but if you are into commerce and trading, then yeah, maybe then you could start, getting doubles and whatnot. Or maybe do you prefer digital or the actual floppies? Then you could be a Wednesday warrior, right? So I guess my point is, like, the sooner you find out who you are, the better you are in the long run. Because, like, when you realize you're not a seller, but you have amassed like multiple copies of books, and I don't feel like selling these, what am I going to do now? And then you just do, you just carelessly just sell them for cheap and lose all your money.
Right. So what you're saying is that one thing that newbies or people getting back into might want to do is consider what their motivation is. I think
right.
So if your motivation is, gee, I remember reading comics in the past, or I have friends reading comics, I'm interested in it. Are you, are you just interested in reading and learning about it, and deciding what to do? And then you could take some of the other hints that we gave. Or are you interested and you said, gee, my brother-in-law bought this comic for like $100. He just sold it for $1,000. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's a whole different approach. And, you may not really care about the stories other than going to inside and finding key comics that you can get, on the cheap and whatever else.
It'll dictate, how much you're going to be spending in this hobby. Like, oh, if I'm going to be a high-end trader, then maybe I shouldn't be a Wednesday warrior, or oh, I probably shouldn't invest in slabbing if I'm not really going to plan on selling these. I just want to, just keep the books. So yeah, I mean, the sooner you find out what kind of collector you're going to be, the better. I think that's like my main advice. I have others, but I'll let others talk.
Okay, so I think focusing both in terms of what your motivation is,
that's
and then looking at like what character you may like or something like that, might be the way to go. And then, as Matt said, asking for advice. I mean,
that's key.
We're going to have some advice on some specific topics. We already got a couple from Alan that people might want to write down and consider if they're looking for something new. I think that would make some sense.
Yeah, tune into Comic Crowd every month, newbies.
There you go.
We'll set you right. We'll set you right.
I mean, that's one place to take a look at getting experts. And the other thing I think that you mentioned, Pretty Fly, is important is if you're told about, oh, this series is really great, and then you go and you find out, well, number one of this series is like $1,000. You have to remember, you should buy like what you think you're going to like and find something that you love, but then you have to also buy stuff that you can afford.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm reminded what Marty McFly said to Doc Brown. Your head's above your heart for a reason. Or poorly quoted. So don't go in the comment section. Oh, you just quoted that. But yeah, you gotta be smart too, because you'll end up like spending so much money. Like even if you have like the FOMO, I gotta read this, but maybe you could just wait until it's out on digital, or go to when your library has it. You could read it for free. So no need to go on eBay and spend 10x the cover price, because like 8 billion genies is hot or something like that.
I can tell you too, to that end, I mean, you mentioned a lot of good things, the library and digital. Go to YouTube. I can tell you, I joke about this, but I'm serious. Do you know how much money I saved reading Spider-Man just by subscribing to Brian?
Yeah.
It's great. I don't have to go back and read it. He'll do the whole reviews. Like, okay, good. I don't have to read it now.
Well, that's also the thing for newbies. Like, a lot of newbies are afraid to jump in. Like, where do I start? Like, I don't know where. Just jump in. And what you do is you pick up a comic, right? And then go on YouTube, search for the previous issues, and it'll catch you up like that. Because there's so many sources out there now that I didn't have back in the 90s. I only had like Wizard magazines to go off of, but like there's so much sources now that can catch you up on who's who. Like, You know, Bastion makes an appearance on X-Men '97. Oh, spoiler! Sorry, spoilers. But you know, now I can like go on YouTube and find out everything I need to know and have a deeper appreciation of the character.
Yep. That the finding out the resources that are out there now compared to what they used to be when me and someone else were first buying comics, it is phenomenal. Like the resources are amazing, and I tell that to people is go on YouTube, go like just search comic books and comic book chat and all that kind of stuff, and you'll get so much information and so many good resources, so many good tips to go. But what was kind of mentioned by one is one of either Alan or Pretty Fly about the FOMO and like not spending too much money. What is really there's some websites that can really get you hooked, like a largemouth bass on a summer morning. You know, when they say top 10 and this is a hot book and it's selling for this, and you start to see people kind of get all excited, and they think that they're not a serious. They can't really get into this hobby unless they have a 9.8 of this book. And I've seen that at cons. I saw a young couple one time at the Fan Expo in Toronto. They were looking at a Golden Age Flash book that was beat to death. Like the guys that were selling it for a very reasonable price for the condition of the book. The couple, they thought they wanted to get into comic books a bit. They weren't sure. They wanted to be able to say they had a Golden Age book, but they were so embarrassed about the condition of this one. And it was like, no, like, this is okay. I was eavesdropping, and I talked to him about it. I said, you're not going to be judged by, you're not going to be judged by like honest to goodness collectors by the condition of a book if you have a book you love. So
hey Mark, I hate to time out here, but you gotta read that comment.
This one?
No,
that's me.
Look. In their defense, they had cave paintings. All right.
They did have cave.
They were hard to carry around. You know what it's like trying to slab a cave painting? Like,
That's a big
wouldn't
slab.
even take it.
Is that
A slab of rock.
How about that? Now, Steve said buy those keys. Now, if you're starting out, should you be looking for keys, or should you be looking? I mean, I think if you think you're going to sell, yeah. If you think you want to build a great collection, yeah. But I'm just wondering, is that really one of the first things you do when you're either starting off or coming back into the hobby?
I think it all has to do with how much money you have, what's your interest, if you're going to resell. And it's more like find something that you really like, as we've said before, like something that really grabs your interest or grabs your attention. If it's an artist or if it's a character or if it's a cover, any of that stuff. So, and just clarification, fire came before paper. So,
how did you start the fire back in the day?
Hey, we didn't start the fire though. Remember that? It was always turning.
It was always burning as the world was turning.
I'm sorry, this chat is on fire today.
It is.
But just to go back to your question, Joe. I mean, it goes back to what I said. You got to figure out who you are as a collector. I mean, who knows? Maybe those keys is what drew you into the hobby. Like, oh, I remember seeing, this cover, and then, I want it now because I saw it when I was a kid. So maybe that could be a pursuit, but then you got to be smart about it.
I think that's a lot of what I see from you guys, from the 90s. I call you guys the 90s guys,
Whippersnappers.
What I see is like, and Mark, I think you see the same thing too. What I see is people saying, yeah, I bought this Shining thing because, in the 90s I had this one, and I remember reading this and all that, and I think that a lot of people do that. I mean, I kind of do it, with looking at the Silver Age stuff. I'm looking to fill in some keys that have Silver and Bronze Age pretty much,
Right.
So I think going back, if you already were reading it at some point in time, rather than a complete newbie, where you might have seen the movies or TV shows and you're interested in seeing what they are, you probably sometimes go back to things that you think you did like I did. But when I picked up some of them, I said, I don't like these anymore. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to, knowing why you're in the hobby now. Are you into follow characters? Are you into just buy and buy and buy? Because nostalgia apparently is a big business.
Yeah.
And
Right.
trust me, Marvel, DC, everybody, even outside of comics, TV shows and whatnot, video game companies are big into this now. They will gladly take your money to keep making and remaking and repackaging the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's like look at the Transformer series that's out right now that's going crazy. The GI Joe series that's going crazy, and they're they're looking at who has disposable income. How old are
foil
they?
covers are back. Foil covers
and
are back. The
the
90s
foil
are back.
covers are back.
Yeah,
like
they're back.
I'm
Staying
fully
strong.
expecting a foil die cut monstrosity that has 3D effects and blows in the dark
Yeah,
to be out soon. And like everybody who bought books in the 90s, well, their heads will blow up and they'll be fighting to get it.
They'll top you even more. They'll top you because like they'll even have facsimiles of Silver Age issues in foil.
And
Yeah.
foil.
It's like,
I stopped buying
where
the
else can we go,
facsimiles when
guys?
that
Well,
happened.
They're hitting us from both ends. But guys, Alan has always said something, and it's really always stayed in my head. He got into comics by watching the old X-Men series from the 90s. And, I've thought about that in different shows and different avenues. I'm really no different, okay? Like, I'm going to show books because, well, that's what Matt Woods does. But, like, I love the Conan movies. So what was the first comic books that I really started getting into? Conan, okay? Well, and then there's other movies. This is no different than Alan liking the X-Men. I loved Army of Darkness, the Evil Dead movies. They were great. Well, they were on comic books, so did that. Now, Star Wars. How many people love the movie Star Wars? There's all there are thousands of Star Wars books. And then there's things like history. I like history. There's an old Texas Ranger, Bass Reeves. Great story if you ever want to hear about it.
It's a TV show now too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a TV show. And so TV can be something, if you like a certain TV show, that can get you into comic books. And I forget, it was Alan, actually. Alan, I keep shouting you out right here in this little segment, okay? You got a lot of wins. But
Nice.
Walking Dead, okay? Now, I'll probably get the channel demonetized because I'm showing a comic book, but this is an amazing series. Now, this is one of those thick compendiums or whatever they're called, but it was a great it started out comic book first, went to television. Sometimes it goes from television to comics first, but usually not. Okay, as with anything, it's usually a book before the movie. But if you like a certain movie, a certain genre or something, pick up that comic book. I bet you 9 times out of 10, if there's a popular movie, there's probably a comic book that goes along with it.
And the omnibuses there, the trade paperbacks, especially for brand new people who are not sure, and you get yourself a trade paperback as the first 6 issues, and you're not buying, and so you can see if you like that story, and I've always directed people that way, like you might not get into it by buying this issue for $6, and this wait, buy that 6-issue compilation and see if you like it. And
See, but no, I'm sorry. Finish. I don't want to cut you off.
I'm done. So you go ahead.
Now, I was thinking along the same lines as you at first when we're thinking about recommendations and reading recommendations for a newbie, and I was like, a trade paperback is best. You pick up a story and you get a whole thing there. But I think you run into a danger there where if somebody says, "Hey, I really like Batman. What's a good Batman trade to read?" And then you read, "Oh, well, here's the Dark Knight Returns." It's pretty much an all or nothing shot. They might say, "Yeah, I don't like this."
Yeah.
I even thought about recommending, and I actually even asked my LCS if they still make anything like this. One of the first trades I bought when I was a kid was this Very Best of Marvel.
Yep.
Where it's just a random collection of nothing like big story wise, but just random Fantastic Four stories, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Thor, Daredevil, X-Men. But here's the problem. If I pick this up and I read this now, being that these stories are, some 30, 40 years old, that's not going to reflect what's in the store now. I mean, look, you read an Avengers comic from 10, 20 years ago, it's vastly different than what's coming out now. So that's why I think it's so tough just to say, oh yeah, if you like Avengers, go with this storyline.
And Phil, that's what happened to me, because I used to read Fantastic Four, X-Men, Avengers, and Spider-Man among some of the DC ones. So in 2006 or 7, whenever it was, when I got back into comics kind of accidentally, I picked up all 4 of those, and the only one that I thought was any good and that I kind of liked was the Spider-Man, the ASMs. The X-Men, I had no clue what the hell was going on. Fantastic Four,
we still don't,
really sucked. And the Avengers was like, what? They weren't the Avengers that I knew. I don't know what kind of Avengers they were. And they came out with Avengers Classic. I go, oh, I'll get this one because it's the classic Avengers. No, it wasn't. So that to me soured me, and now I'm known as a DC guy.
Yeah,
big time.
But I want to go into my suggestions though, and I'm gonna bring them up because I have them here. So I started to say to myself, if I had to pick 3 books, which ones would I get? And I'm telling newbies or people who want to get into these, you do not have to buy these. All right. And so let me just get the share screen up here.
The rare influencer that's not influencing people to buy. Good for you.
Right. So
7 up of influencers.
Most libraries, all right, let me bring this up. Most libraries have a online, it's probably just, they don't necessarily do it, but they join a particular thing where they have online stuff going on, right? And so this is one that the Naples Public Library has, and it's called Hoopla, right? And you could join, as long as you have a library card, you could join it for free. So the first book that I wanted to read, you could see it here, was Paper Girls, because I heard some good things about it, but it was, I think it's 30, you see it's 30 issues. And I went to take a look, and I think it was something like $29.95 to buy the to buy the trade. I'm saying I could buy the trade, but I just want to really read it because I heard it's good. So I borrowed it from Hoopla, and I think it gave me 3 weeks to read it, but I read it in a couple of days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever, and it was very good. I enjoyed it. It's basically the 12-year-old newspaper girls that kind of get thrown together in kind of this multi-dimensional type of thing. It's really kind of interesting. And so if you like more kind of science fiction-y type of things with normal people involved with that, that's a good one to do. All right. So that's one that I think would be really good. The other one, I have 2 more. Then I said, well, I'm a DC guy, right? So come on, I'm trying to remove this thing and it won't remove. So I said, okay, I'm a DC guy. So what do I do with it? So one thing that I decided was, let me come up with 2 DC books for people. So the first one I have, get the right window here, is, and where is it? Okay, I can't find it. Let me go back to Hoopla. Hold on a second. That's what happens when you have too many things open there.
I recommend DC World's Finest, the Mark Waid run right now with Dan Mora.
Right.
That's a pretty good one.
Okay, so let me go back to this, and I'll just look up. So the other one I think is, you see, I've got it right here, is All-Star Superman.
Yep.
When I first went ahead, all right, and so I'll just click on this one. You can borrow this one. I have all 12 issues because when I first went in back in the day, I saw this on the stand and it looked interesting to me, but I didn't really follow up on it for a while. Then I picked up number 1. This would be the trade, 320 pages, right? 12 issues. This would be so I picked up number 1 and I liked it a lot. All right. So it's very emotional. The artwork is really good. It's not Superman. I mean, it's, Elseworld, whatever you want to call it, imaginary tale, but it has so much of the essence of Superman in it, that it's timeless to me. And so I would say if you have Hoopla, or was it Libby is another one, I think.
Libby.
Libby, you know, go and see if they've got this. You can go to your library and they might have it as well.
Yeah.
And if you're tactile, you may
Yep.
want to do that. But if you're just trying to explore, and people say, how about this? Or how about a Batman or whatever, you know? I mean, you can explore it. They have Batman ones here as well. So that's another one. And the last one was, let me see if I can bring it up. It'd be the New Frontier.
Just for you young folks, a library is a big building that has books and stuff, but it's also online.
Yeah.
You know, like
Oh, that's not it. I'm sorry. I got the
but-
wrong one.
And they have something called a Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah, and you know, you can find any kind of entertainment that's printed or video or
And they have these round things called, correct me if I'm wrong, like CDV or DVDs.
they even have this weirder thing called 8-tracks.
I
Wow.
don't think so.
Microfilm.
Not mine.
Oh yeah.
So
Okay,
the
fine.
New Frontier is basically kind of taking the golden age DC heroes and moving them into the silver age, you know, and it's such a great story. I mean, it's just fantastic. And both of these two DC ones, you can get the DVDs of the stories, okay?
Sure.
And both DVDs of the animated adaptations are very good, but they don't include the whole story. They can't do it in an hour and a half. So I really would recommend that you first read through the story, and then you go ahead to the DVD and you can enjoy it kind of again, and you'll see what they did and what might be different or left out of the story. So, like, for example, the All-Star Superman, the 12-issue run is so much superior to a animated story, which is excellent. So to me, it's just something where if you get a recommendation or you want to explore, before you go out and actually buy stuff or decide I'm going to collect a particular comic book, you can find some good reading right here on your local library's Hoopla or Libby or whatever it happens to be. So that's my suggestion to people to
Joe,
do.
Joe,
Yeah.
you just sparked a memory about finding books, tactile books in the comics in the library, because my dad just used to drop me off in the library and thought I was doing research, but then he caught me. I was like reading comic books. Yeah, he never let me go to the library ever again.
You'd have to sneak it.
Yeah.
You didn't know how to sneak that.
You had to sneak
No,
into a library?
he
That's
picked me up.
really
He
bad.
picked me up early, and he saw me just reading comic books. I'm like, you're supposed to be doing homework.
Well, if you're supposed to be doing homework, you should have been doing homework pretty flat.
Yeah. That's kind of on you there,
But look how I turned out.
There you go.
Nobody.
Yeah, you don't have
Mark-
a comic book.
Mark
You don't have a
didn't
home
answer that,
anymore.
Mark.
You live in a Starbucks.
Yeah, you live in a Starbucks, so
Hey, you know, times are
Good
tough.
coffee though.
But can I just add one more thing? Sorry. Oh, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to talk about research for anybody who's interested in it. And there's so many things. And I threw a couple of links to Joe's.
Yeah. Tell me which one you want to bring up first.
You pick one and I'll talk about it
Okay.
because I don't want to put stress on you, Joe.
No stress. Okay.
But again, it's if you're interested and you're not sure and you want to find out about a writer, you want to find about an artist, you want to find about a character. There's so many different ones. So this one, for example, I don't know if you guys have ever been to this website, but Joe, if you could just scroll over to the Comicpedia.
To the
at the
what?
top,
Oh,
the
Comicpedia.
Comicpedia, right there. You see there it says artists and comic history, but just click on artists, for example.
Wow, that's cool.
Now, this you can also by every artist name and also by country.
Oh wow.
If you want to know what this artist, and just click on A
That's cool.
if you want.
I'm sorry?
Just click on A, and I'll show you what you can do. So if there's somebody you've heard about or you just want to see, there's all the artists. And when you click on the artist name, it'll show you the books they've done.
Wow.
That's great.
So if you're, I heard about this artist or I heard about this writer, and these are the kind of resources that you can do some research and say, oh, that book. And a lot of these books are not super expensive. They're just examples of, and there's some of their artwork. And it kind of leads you down a particular path if you want to. But this is just one example of resources that are out there.
It's
And
amazing.
if you are, say, interested, for me, living in Canada, I'm always kind of interested who the Canadian artists are involved in the comic industry, because there's not a lot. You can search this database by country and see who, again, all alphabets, it'll tell you how many artists from this country and what they did. And by, you know, like, and you can click on and like, if you click on, he's not related, but click on Care Andrews. He's at the bottom of the second column. So it tells his bio, and it starts, if you scroll down, starts to talk about the books that he's done.
It's really good.
And you go,
resource.
wow, I didn't know he did that. Maybe I want to go look at his art. I want to go read the story. And you know, and those are the kind of things that are available for anybody to figure stuff out if they want to know more before they get involved in FOMO or before they get involved in you know, those kind of things. So if you go to the other site, Joe.
Yep.
That's a cool database right there.
Yeah.
Or it's an awesome database.
Yeah.
We'll put when I get the chance, I'll put the links in the description. Okay. Yep, hold on a second.
I guess.
Just trying to find it. Go ahead, talk.
Go ahead.
Oh, I guess that would be my other tip for beginners, is to really engage with the material.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I mean, you could read and you could collect, and you know that's the lifeblood of the industry. But you can also, like Mark suggested, like if you like a certain artist and their work draws you into the hobby, go research that artist, that particular artist. Or if you like their art, you know, just, hey, take out a sketch pad and start, you know, mimicking their art style.
Yeah.
You can even trace on it. There's so many things you can do with just you know, sometimes you get bored with just reading or whatever, but there's so many other things you can do. And then what I've been doing, like recently for a year, is I've been actually like journaling all my readings, all my you know, my buys and purchases. Like, for example, I have like a journal app that I use on my iPhone, and you know, I just pulled up a random day, and like I remember when this book came out, it was so hot.
Oh, wow.
You know, I was like, and then I wrote down, why are people like all excited about this? We have Miles Morales. This is a derivative of another derivative character. But I'm just saying,
tell me how it is.
But that's my journal, though. Like, you know, like a lot of us are very nostalgic. What better to be nostalgic about than your very own memories?
That's very cool.
Of this journey. And oh wait, there's more.
Wait.
Because I'm all about tech, and I'm kind of infusing my love for tech with the hobby as well. What I like to do too is I take screenshots, pictures of what I read, and I make like a map. I use this app that comes with your iPhone called Freeform. It's like an infinite canvas app. And what I do is I just I find an interesting panel, I take a snapshot, plop it in there. For example, like this one, I think this is AI.
Oh, that's
you
cool.
know?
It's cool
You know?
either way. Yeah.
But that's my point, though. It's like I'm finding ways to engage, because recently, I mean, money's been pretty tight, and I have to adjust. You know, I used to be like the speculator collector. I have like 6 copies of Last Ronin #1, just to brag. But
Just saying, mic drop.
yeah. But I'm saying, like, but now, you know, I have kids, and then my stack of to read pile is like this big now. So I'm like, all right, I can't spend any more than what I used to, you know. So what are other avenues that I can, like, you know, kind of like fill my my needs as a collector? And part of it's journaling, part of it's doing like maps of like my readings, you know, like
Watching Anachronic Comics.
you know,
Yeah.
like I can quickly pull up I'm making my own key collector app, my personal,
For yourself. Nice.
you know, basically that's what it is. But, you know, like, really find ways to engage with this hobby. And there's so, like I said in the beginning, it's like multifaceted. Like, there's like so many avenues.
That's
you know,
terrific.
you can put your energy into this hobby. It's not like you just, I learned a golf swing and that's it. Like, oh, yay. But, you know, not to put down golfers, but I'm saying we have more than just the thing, you know.
Right, got it.
So
Hey,
this,
I have a question for Lenny, though. You pulled up your iPhone. What are you filming on?
What's that? Oh, I'm on my iPad.
Okay.
He's got electronic devices everywhere.
We assume you were
Yeah.
on your phone. Then you pull out your phone.
You see my desk. I look like Oracle. You know, like I have like monitors everywhere. But
This one is just another example of another website. This is Pencil Link, and Joe's
cool.
going to put the links in. Again, you can look at keys, you can look at artists, you can look at writers, you can get some history, you can find out characters that are really obscure, you can find out ones that are really well
I
known.
see an homage cover.
Yeah, there's publishers, like there's all kinds of stuff that you can go and look at and educate yourself. And the last thing I just want to quickly talk about, Joe, is the cons. Like not only going to the LCS and just listening and talking to people talk about comics,
Right.
but go to a Comic-Con and walk and talk. And
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of how cool it can be. There's a new upcoming artist. Her name is Sue Lee. She's now working for DC. She's working for Dark Horse. She's working for Dynamite. She's the artist and writer for Maleficent for the Disney comic, right? She's starting to up a bit. And I saw her at her table in Toronto, and I saw this book. And
oh, nice, the Brubaker, nice.
Yeah, so I like this series a lot.
Newburn, yeah.
But I was looking at Newburn sitting on her desk, and I said, "Are you involved in Newburn?" And she said, "I did the backstory."
Wow.
So she did the backstory for issues 5, 6, 7. So I started talking to her, and this book cost me the price of the book and nothing else, and she signed it for me.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you want to kind of break in, like on the artist side of things, go to a con and just walk Artist Alley and see what they're doing and find out who some of the new upcoming artists are. Maybe, I mean, you're going to see, like Joe and I've talked about ad nauseum about how many times we stopped and talked to Neil Adams when he was still alive in those Artist Alley. But again, some of those artists are there and those writers are there, and just learn and talk to them, and you'll get turned on to something that will catch your interest. And if you get something like this, you're in on the ground floor with an up and coming artist who's now starting to move and do bigger books. And, you've kind of got in on the ground floor with them and paid $0 really, which is in this business, this hobby, you can spend too much money.
Oh yeah.
Like when I'm spending Steve White's money, that's different. But when I'm spending my own, I'm really cautious.
You haven't paid in Canadian dollars. That's really less than zero.
That's pretty loony, man. But you know what? Even like, with YouTube, a lot of those artists are still around, even if they're not with us. They have like panels recorded. You can feel. I mean, some of my favorite things I've seen is like Steranko talking about how he slapped, Bob Kane. That's like still one of my, even though if you really love like your creators, just seek them out, whether personally or just go on YouTube.
Yeah, they're there. And
someone like Tinian, they've got 55 people online or 100 people online, but you've got some of these others, especially some of the older ones that are around that people don't recall too much anymore. And you have a lot of new ones, and they're happy to talk to you too. So it's really, really good.
Yeah, like as Steve was mentioning, Jim Zub was there, who's the writer of Conan, and we were back to his table about 3 times, and he was chatting with us, and it's signing books and all excited, and you get caught up in their enthusiasm.
All right.
You do. You get caught up, and you want to read their stories because they're storytellers. That's
right.
And and that's part, again, what for someone brand new, I can't stress. Go to the LCS, go to the cons, do your research, go online, see what it is that grabs you, and it's
so many.
Meet this kind of people that are in this panel, and they're amazing. Well, most are, except for Matt, maybe.
Ouch.
I got 2 more things that are kind of. I'm looking. I started to think back to when I first collected. Now, it was like in the 60s, basically, right? And that's before we knew that like my X-Men #2 could have been worth a lot of money or something like that. So it's thrown in the corner, piled up high, no real storage scenario. So one thing I would say is, as an addendum to all of this, a couple of things. Number one, as you try to learn as to what you're going to go into, what you're going to try out, and then especially if you find like a handful of comics that you can afford to buy, or if even new series as you start picking up, make sure that you store them properly. Because as my son said, now I have a lot of comic books, right? And I said, I'm going to give a bunch of them away. I'm doing these things, whatever else, because they're really not worth nothing emotional to me and no real monetary thing. And he says, don't do it. I go, why? He says, Dad, when you collected those comics in the 60s, you didn't know what their value was going to be now. He goes, you have all these comic books here that you're going to leave to me. He says, I don't plan on selling them. I'm going to just hold them for 20 years and then see what they're worth. So in some ways, he's right. And so the newer ones are clearly better maintained than the original ones I had. So I'm not saying that it has to be for purposes of selling later on, but you do want to be able to, if you want to pull your books out, like to share it with somebody else even, or even to look at them again. I don't know how many of you guys do it, but I go into those comics my mom let me keep.
Yeah.
I have a few like long boxes of those, and now and then I'll just pull out like 5 or 6 of them, and it's just great to read them again and go through them.
Right.
And I got to be kind of careful because some of them are very delicate, but if they're in good shape, you can pull them out, you can read them again, and that's a lot of fun. And the second thing is, I promised my son this 3 years ago. I still haven't finished it. Try to organize them, maybe like Mr. Matt Woods has. I've been putting them in. You can do it on a spreadsheet. A lot of people do that, right? I mean, I think Mark, that's what you do, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
I know that other people do that as well. I have the CLZ, and I've been putting stuff in there, but maybe I got about half of them in, because you get involved in other things and you say, oh, I should put these in now, or what have you. So if you start from the beginning, even if it's just a spreadsheet on your computer, and you come up with a methodology to be able to put them in, you know what you have. If you know they're in box number 1, 2, or 3, you put what box they're in, and that'll make life a lot easier as you go along as well. So it's not picking what you like or what you're going to read or how you're going to do things, but if you do get the raw comics, you're the tactile person. I think even if you read online, you're going to do that if you really love comics and you get really into it. Just make sure that you store them properly, and there's plenty on YouTube to tell you how to do that, and that you also try to organize them in a way that makes sense. Alphabetical is good, or you can just do it by series. I do mine basically by series. I know that a particular series is in box number 6 or something like that, so I can always go there and pull it out because I know exactly where it is. So that I think is something to consider as well. We've told you guys.
And to add to that, Joe, I mean, a lot of us we buy stuff and it just stays in the box, never to see the light of day again until I don't know, whenever. But even if you amassed a couple of boxes of books, I highly recommend that you just pull one out randomly and just look what you bought, because it's really fun. Oh, I remember this, I remember that, I remember when I bought this, and it also kind of informs you of what you're really into. Like when I look at certain books, oh, why did I buy this? I kind of knew why, but I was oh, maybe I shouldn't have. But then then I found my my new 52 Capullo covers of Batman. I'm oh, this is the stuff. So now I kind of moved to collecting runs that has dedicated artists. Right now, Dan Moore is dedicated to World's Finest, and I love his stuff. So that's one of the few things now that are in my pull list, because like I said, I've been trying to cut down. So just look through your collection and see what kind of tingles your spider senses, and to be PC. But yeah, but it kind of you kind of know about yourself by looking through your collection, and maybe not buy these because there's a first appearance anymore. Maybe stick to this, because when I look back at my collection, oh, these are the stuff that excite me, and you kind of want to hone into that.
I agree, because I always like the Adams, and I didn't realize he was he was Neil Adams kind of when I was
Yeah.
gravitating towards it. And then, you know, when I started going to the Comic-Con and I saw him there, I went back and looked at my stuff. And then I made sure every year I went back there with books for him to sign and talk to him a little bit about stuff and all of that, because it was something that I said, yeah, I like this guy's art. I remember that stuff. And that's just because I looked at the older comic books.
Yep.
It just rekindled that love of the artist.
Yeah, anybody who's a new collector should not just collect for the sake of it's a cool cover. They need to read it. Like, you know, there's lots and lots of people.
I like my cool covers too, Mark.
I like cool covers too. Like, I like cool covers.
Yeah.
But
I hear you.
I read everything I buy.
Yeah, like get the
like
most
there's
out
a lot
of
of blood, sweat, and tears have gone into all of those books on the inside as well. And then you really start to do what Joe says. Suddenly you'll go, man, I like this writing. Who is this?
Right.
And oh, well, they wrote that. I didn't realize they wrote that. And that's how you expand your enjoyment of the hobby. And it's just read your books and enjoy them.
And let me put it this way: at the price that the books are now, you want to like milk every single cent that you're putting into that one book.
Yep.
You know, like put your mileage on that book, because they're not getting any cheaper.
Nope.
Unless you're a Lucky Spawn fan, then maybe you're still good, but still $2.99.
To that end too, because I mean we've spoken a lot about digital and library and whatnot. If you absolutely need to have a physical copy of something, 9 times out of 10 you wait a couple months. Wait until Midtown is having one of those sales where somehow after shipping it's almost like it wasn't a sale, but you don't have to pay cover price.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
there's a reason there's dollar bins. Like, go through the dollar bins and find those books and find the books that are slightly damaged. And like my LCS has a free comic book box that they put books in that. So if you can't afford a book, then take it and read it and see what it's like. And that's the thing. If you have an LCS and you can get a good relationship with them and go and talk to the people who are hanging out there like us, it's not as terrifying as it somewhat seems, which I know, like you can tell a newbie walking into an LCS because you're like, they look like
that guy.
Yeah, they look like that guy right down there.
Well, you example, I liked Geiger. I read Geiger, right? I bought it and I liked it, and now this whole universe is coming up, and so they had that character. What's his name? Junkyard Joe, right?
Yeah, Junkyard Joe.
And I said, oh, I gotta buy that again, and I just never got around to buying it. So I went to that new LCS I found in Connecticut, which I have to drive 40 minutes to, but at least it's not an hour and a half. And so I've been going there to pick up my Conans and things like that. And so he has a whole bunch, just lines and lines of books. Some of them, are kind of expensive. Most of them are on the wall that are expensive. He doesn't really carry very many, graded books. They're all raw, And so now and then I look through some titles that I think I might be interested in. And I was looking through the J's, and there was the entire run of Junkyard Joe for either $1.50 a piece or $2.
Yeah.
So I said, okay.
Yeah, exactly what Bill's talking about. Just wait.
Should I wait now for Red Coat and the rest of them to show?
Red Coat. The former Wednesday Warrior in me just cries every time I see a book being sold for less than when I bought it. It's on a dollar bin. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah. But
you guys hit on a really, really, really important point. Getting into comic books can be intimidating because at first you think they're all cheap because you grew up when they were 65 cents or whatever, or Joe a dime. Okay. Mark, it might have been at 12 cents when you were growing up. But the point is this: comic books can be very, very expensive, like all jokes aside, but they don't have to be expensive. You guys talked about library resources. You talked about dollar bins. Mark, your LCS does the free, the free bin, just for the reader copies. So that is a great, method to get into without blowing a whole lot of money. Somebody said, buy the key books. That's how you get into it. Listen, if you start to like comic books and it becomes a thing with you, by all means, if you have the disposable income, do that. But don't start out buying keys, because if you do that, you're going to end up getting disappointed. Start out, on a cheap, and start out doing what you enjoy.
Yeah. So I think one of the things like Mark and Phil, like what you guys said really resonated with me, and to match with what Matt was saying. Honestly, a good lesson that I learned when going into the LCS the very first time is like, one, not being afraid to ask people some recommendations, because talking to people and figuring out what they like, if it matches what you like, that matches. But secondly, like Phil, what you said like really resonates. I feel like I rushed way too much at the beginning of comic collecting. I was like, oh, I'm so far behind. I have to collect all of these things so I could catch up and read. And where did I end up? Like a short box full of books I never read. And when I look at it, I'm like, why did I pick this up? So I think just trying to figure out what you like and taking that time to figure out what you like is well worth that investment of time, and not rushing and buying like a whole series just for the heck of it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
I kind of screwed up that in the beginning when I came back into it. I can't tell you the stuff that I bought, and to complete a series. I remember when what was it? I guess it was Civil War, when Civil War came out, and at that time, I mean, it certainly changed. Realizing I didn't have to buy all these, kind of like, what's the word that they call it? They have a series and they have the other comic books.
crossover.
What's that?
Crossover.
No, it's not a crossover. It's like you got the main 7 or 8 issue series, and they got these other ones that kind of play into
the tie-ins.
The tie-ins.
Tie-ins.
Right, the tie-ins. So when that came out, I said, oh, tie-ins, I got to read the tie-ins. And so I collected them all, and I read them. As I'm reading them, going, well, okay. I mean, it helped give a little background on something, but it wasn't that significant. And I think I told this story before. So I don't remember what volume of She-Hulk it was, right? But She-Hulk number 8 was the tie-in for Civil War, right? And it had its own cover and all of that. And so I missed the first edition. All right. So I got the second. So one would say, okay, but you still got the story and all of that, right? But I was saying, no, that's not any good. I got to get that first one. So I looked far and wide for it. And people were asking like a lot of money for that for some reason. I guess they knew there were people like me that felt they had to complete it, And so then I found somebody for a reasonably good price that was selling numbers 1 to 10. So I bought number 1 to 10 just so I can have that first edition of number 8. I don't think I ever read the other ones,
I'll say this.
Then I took my second edition, put it in with those other 10. I think I still have them somewhere. Maybe I'll put them in a mystery box for cancer or for St. Jude's or something like that. And I said, oh, now I'm looking back, I'm going to myself, why did I do that? And as I went along, when one of these series came out and I was still buying new comics routinely, I never did the tie-ins. I just read the story, and it's fine. So if you're new or coming into it, don't go crazy with tie, because they'll try to do that for you.
Oh, they will.
Although different covers because of all these people, pick one. If you like the covers, pick 1 or 2 or 3 that you like.
You don't have to get all of them. Like
unless you're a Conan fan, then you got to buy every cover of every edition, everything like that. So
if you're a completionist, you should not be a comic collector. Just should not be, because that is really bad.
Well, Joe, just be happy it's Civil War and not Batman's No Man's Land.
Oh, okay.
That's like tomes of comic book. But although there is one exception, the tie-ins are good, and that's the death metal one, where they introduce the Joker who laughs. There's a tie-in for that.
Right.
The Red Death. Those are pretty cool.
Those tie-ins looked like they were better.
Yeah, I think
they actually contributed to the story in significant ways. You learn more about the character. You saw how they got into the main story and all that.
Yeah.
And that was one series that I thought it was worthwhile to get them.
See, I thought the tie-ins were better than the main story with death metal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, there's an exception to every rule. But
just hold that there, Matt. No, you can hold that.
There you go.
Hey, I'm just shouting out my buddy Trev, okay?
But
fastest rising star in YouTube.
And you know
That's
what?
for sure.
And here's also a tip, okay? If you're cautious, like if you're not unsure of like, should I read this book? Just watch a YouTube video on it. Read the beginning. See if you like the premise of the story. And if you do, then hey, stop the video and get the issues.
Yep.
If
Yeah.
not, move on. So that way it'll save you from like, oh, why did I buy this? Everyone said it was good, but I hate it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
One thing though that I think that we haven't said yet, and that we should caution especially newbies on, even though this may seem like a common sense thing, common sense, if anything, is not common. If you are going to go online and do a Google search for free comics, make sure you're looking at a reputable source and not, I'm not speaking from personal experience, I'm speaking from friend of a friend of experience, not like Russian websites, yes, that you go and you read the latest issue of Batman and all of a sudden your phone gets bricked.
Yep. Yeah. You need to go to really good sites and do, like the right sponsors and stuff. And if, you're not, if you're a little leery of going down the rabbit hole of the internet, if you can find an LCS, they all have the catalogs for the upcoming books.
Right.
Ask to see it and start to read the introductions and look at, who the writer and stuff. And I've done that for years and years. Is I've always get a catalog. I take a look and see what's coming up and get an idea of the synopsis and stuff. But that's because I know, yes, Matt, I'm old, so I like the catalog.
But I'm innocent on this one.
But that brings up two more things that before we end it, I want to make sure that I showed this. Both for the big companies like DC, Marvel, Image. I'm going to share one. They have their own sites, and let me just bring up the Marvel site. Let's see. Okay, there it is. So they have their own sites, and when you go through it, you can actually find out what the new releases are.
Yeah.
And besides that, if you're into digital comics and you're willing to pay for it, you can get onto their digital site here, Marvel Unlimited, to tell you what's available there. So, and they have a lot more information as well about characters. You see the Complete Guide to Women of Marvel. I put this up for Gary B. So, I mean, I think that they have a bunch of different things that you can do. You see on top movies, right? TV shows, games. So it's basically all thing Marvel comic books that's there. So I think that's something that you may want to consider. Another one that, if I can bring it up real quick, and there's one for DC and there's one for Marvel as well. And that is Fandom, which I like and I read a lot. So Fandom has, let me bring it up. It's a bunch of steps to do this. Okay. So when you go to Fandom, you have, it's basically like a wiki, and this is their homepage. It's a database. And just like that website that Mark talked about, but this is DC based, you can go by, different characters. You can put in with search page. See, there's 127,573 pages. They have same thing in TV and movies, current shows, Arrowverse, DC movies, the DC comics, heroes, villains, teams, events. When I do some of my historical perspectives, I always look at these because when you go on something, let me see if I could find one real quick. It tells you all about the character. All right.
I knew he was Clark Kent.
Real name and all that. But, and let me just put in here. So let me do the Superboy here. All right, Superboy Volume 1, number 212. All right. When you go to it, it gives you a synopsis, and some of them are not completed because it's done by people. You can go to 211, 212, but it tells you who wrote it. Jim Shooter wrote this edition, who the penciler was, who the inker was, who the letterer was, and who the editor was. So you get, and then it gives you a synopsis for it. It tells you who the characters were, and sometimes there's more than one story here. So they have other stories in there as well. Then they give you some interesting notes. This is where I get some of my trivia stuff from, Sometimes they have the Legion regulations forbid multiple members from having the same superpower to promote a more diversified roster. Superboy and Supergirl are noted as being exceptions, You know,
I have
and
to
like
back
Cosmic
Joe
Book Date Sunday to see a Charles Bronson movie. Death Wish. I mean, come on. I mean,
Nice.
these are great.
Yeah.
These are great stories. You
Right,
know,
yeah.
I mean, so, and then again, there's one from Marvel as well. And so
Yeah.
with some stuff like that, what you want to do is there's so many different ways to find
Yep.
out about comic books that
And
you
they're
really
and they're
get into
safe.
that. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
And
you
they're
can
safe to what Phil's talking about, because there's a lot of bad spots to go to. And
Sure.
Dark Horse has that, Image has that, Dynamite has that, and just go to the companies and look at it. It's great, Joe. It's super.
I
Yeah.
have a question. Well, I have a question. Well, sorry, it's not really related to this, but I just thought of it because I think it's an important one, and it might be a tough to answer. All right, so you're getting into comics. You go to an LCS. You pay your books, and then the owner gives you a subscription list. What are your thoughts on pull lists for beginners? What are your like? Because I from experience, pull lists can go out of hand real quick. So what are your advice for newbies about pull lists? Yay,
I-
yay, or
Do you mean
How new are we talking about? If there's
Like-
somebody who wants to know what comic books are about and if there's good stories,
well,
no, don't touch a pull list. But are you talking about somebody that picked up a handful of issues and actually
yeah,
kind
well,
of enjoyed it?
they want to get into it, but then of course they pay for the books, and obviously like the owner wants you to be locked into a subscription series, but like what are your, I have some cautionary tales because sometimes I feel bad that I'm canceling a book sometimes, like, but times are tough now, and it's not like
You gotta
what it
do
used
it.
to be.
yeah,
But
but
you got to do it. But then, like, again, you don't want to, hurt that relationship you have with the LCS because you never know when you want to come back.
Well,
Or
I think that's more for people that have kind of found their niche,
Yeah.
And then I think it could make some sense. I agree with CJ. I mean, I did one at one time where I got 10% off and bagged and boarded, and I got another one time where it was 15% off, bagged and boarded.
well,
know?
if you don't buy a book, it's 100% off.
Yeah.
Well, right. So,
but you know
but
what?
what
Though?
I'm saying is,
Right.
I would limit that to things that you really want to follow. And frankly, towards the end, when I was getting things, I only did it with Amazing Spider-Man until I just lost. I mean, got so terrible, I just stopped.
Right.
I did it with Amazing Spider-Man. I did it with Superman and with Batman, I think, for a while. But then all I did was when a new series came out, and I knew it was like a 10-issue series, I would do that because I knew it would end eventually.
Okay. All
With
right.
respect to that. So and that way I knew I would, if I couldn't get there 1 week or 1 month or whatever it happened to be, I knew it would be there when I got back.
Right.
And so that to me was good because I didn't have to look on the Midtown site and pay for shipping or do something else like that to find something along those lines. And you really need to get an LCS, a local comic book store that has been around for a while and that has the ability or the capability to do this. Because I got involved with one where he was basically a sole practitioner. He had people like Mark going in and helping him, But at one point in time, he got sick for a week, didn't put in the orders, and at that point in time, he was trying to play catch up. Kept telling me he was going to get me the books. He can get me the books, but he never did. And so that was the end of our relationship. Now, I mean, I felt bad for the guy. Yeah, like you said, Lenny, because he was sick and he couldn't do it. But you know what? You got to be able to have somebody to do this and keep your business, running and all that. I mean, so you got to make sure if it's something like Rhinos that Gary goes to. I mean, there's plenty of people there. I'm sure some of the ones that you go to also they've been there for a while. And so that's good. Midtown Comics has been there for a long time, and if you have a pull list, you get stuff down. Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's going to go to a good cause, to St. Jude's Research Hospital and the Tunnel to Towers Corporation. So I think that'll be really great. And maybe if you don't mind, guys, what I'd like to do at this point, since CJ was so kind to bring that up to us, is let me bring up and just give a shout out right now to the members of the channel. And as you know, I started the membership to help out St. Jude's Hospital for Children with Cancer, and the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, which helps both Gold Star families of soldiers who have passed away, the families of first responders that died in the line of duty. They're helping veterans that have been catastrophically injured with smart homes, and they recently started a program where they're making small apartments for homeless veterans. So a lot of what they do is really terrific. We have some great, we've gotten some recent people joining, which is really fantastic. So we have Tina has been there from the very beginning. We have Terry Deadman, Mark Andrews, who's here, Chuck Hensey, Trev, who came by and now is going to see the rest of the NFL draft. Gary B, who was here, Phil, who's on the panel, Brian LCS. We have Nam in the comic book world, Richard B, Pretty Fly, who's here, Rob Fatstacks of Comics, Cliff on Comics, Milt Miller, Dave Draghi, a friend of mine, Evil's Comics, Mike, who's here, Sleepy Reader 666, Spinner Rack Studios, Doug Bratton, Chris Bigger, and Dave Bratton, my DC.
Now, Joe.
Yeah.
I used to be at the top of the right column.
I know.
I got bumped off. Who bumped me off? Was it Dave?
Whoever was the last one there, I think it was Dave. Yeah.
Dave Bratton.
So thank you again, CJ. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's fantastic. And anybody else who's interested, it's $1.99 a month. That's all it is. We've got some stuff. Tina just won a nice little prize. So we do a prize occasionally. I have put together a terrific T-shirt, which is only for the members. We're taking orders right now. It's one-offs that I put together. So you'll probably get to see it in a few weeks on some people wearing it. So we do have some stuff. You get first, viewing of all of the videos that I put out, usually 3 or 4 days ahead of time as well. I asked you guys for topics. People voted on a topic which I've been working on now, which has to do with the Golden Age heroes. So I've been working on that, trying to put together 2 or 3 or 4 of the videos before I push it out. So I mean, it's basically a good family put together, and we talk often online, and I think it's really a great thing. But the best thing is the money I collect, as soon as I get it, it all goes to St. Jude's Research Hospital and Tunnel to Towers Foundation. So I wanted to put that in there before we finished up today to make sure that people had an opportunity, if they watch this to this point, to join if they have if they can see their will to do it. So anyway, so that's it. So I didn't mean to cut you guys off, but CJ just reminded me of that, so I wanted to make sure I brought that up before we finished off. So who was talking before? I'm sorry.
Phil was trying to get a word in, I think, because I saw him kept going.
Yeah, we were talking about subscriptions and cautionary tales.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'm going to add to Pretty Fly with the pull boxes, I think it's not necessarily for somebody who's just coming in off the street and saying, "Hey, I keep hearing about this Superman guy. What is he all about?" I know that, like, my LCS, I think I get like a 10% discount on my pulls. But some of the other LCSs in the area that I'll go to, they're not my main LCS, they're my side LCS, I guess, where I don't have a pull. They'll offer something like a card. I think it's like for every $10 you spend, you get a notch or a sticker or something. And when you get to all the notches, you get like $10 off of a new purchase, something like that. But I'm going to say this too: if you do get involved in a pull box, whether you're a newbie or you're somebody who's been around like us, don't be afraid to say no, because even though you think you might be hurting the LCS, you're actually helping them. Because if you're getting a big stack of books and not reading it and hating it, whether you realize it or not, you're putting those negative feelings on those unread books on your LCS, and you're going to burn out.
Yes.
And then he's going to lose a whole box.
Yeah.
That was my other tips, to pace yourself, because you're going to burn out. Like, not even just like buying or reading, even like bagging and boarding books could be like, after 20, it'd be like, what am I doing? Kind of thing, It's like,
watch my video Burnout.
Yeah,
Burnout.
It's
Yep.
my worst.
Yeah.
That's my most watched video.
it's a real thing. Burnout's
Is it
a real
really?
thing. It's
Yeah.
it's something that hits us. No matter how
And
smart we're trying to
that's
be.
true. That can happen because that was happening to me. That's when I said, okay, I'm not buying any more new comics. I cut off my ASM, cut off my Justice League of America, everything else, and I just started saying, what do I like?
Yep.
What do I have? And I started looking through my older comics, and then I said, I always like Booster Gold, so I started looking to finish up the Booster Gold run. And I read through the books, and it's really great. And I'm liking like Ted Kord, Blue Beetle. Recently, I've been doing like Doc Savage because I used to read the paperbacks of the 1930s pulp things. So I started saying, oh, I like these things. And it's representative of the things that I liked and the stories that I like and the characters that I like, until Gary B said I needed to collect the new Conan since I didn't buy anything else. And I have to say, I've been reading it and I've really been enjoying it.
You're
But
going to go back.
that's my only new book that I buy every month. And believe me, I'm tempted. I'm tempted because, you guys, and Mark, this is a good series. Steve, this is, and I'm sure it is, but
It really is.
but like Junkyard Joe, I've said, I'll wait,
Yeah.
I'll wait and
And-
I'll buy it.
I know that video of yours, Joe. I remember watching that because it was kind of part of an epiphany moment for me, where it's like, hey, look, in a month I'm going to be 45 years old. I have boxes of comics right over there. Some of these were great, and I loved them. And now, years later, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I have that. I think I'm in the phase of collecting now, where, like you, I'm trying to, for lack of a better word, like curate my collection and say, okay, maybe I don't need all these copies of The Man from Atlantis, which I still don't know how I got in the first place. I can focus in on X-Men, and look, I've even had those moments where I think Dodderman's art book just went out up on Kickstarter, and I went to go look at it, and I was like, oh, $200 for a book of covers that I probably already have, and plus some trading cards. Honestly, I could put that towards an older X-Men book I want, or, because I'm a dad, hey, $200 is about 4 cases of formula.
Phil, and
Bro, diapers, dude.
and Phil, the
yeah.
thing too is when I looked at my X-Men, I remember you were asking about X-Men that you wanted, and I was looking at my X-Men books, and I said, well, this like 1 to 45 is really what I want to keep, or something like that. And I forget which one it was, but it was a sub 100. And I said, yeah, I'll give it to you because I know it's one that you were looking for.
Thank you, Ken.
And you can do that if you focus in your other stuff and get these other things. Don't necessarily think you're gonna, throw them out, or you could try to sell them, I guess. But maybe one of your pals wants it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the second I do, of course, they're gonna say, hey, Johnny Depp is back with the Man from Atlantis series. And as someone who once had most of those Nintendo books that were hot last month, which I'm pretty sure got thrown out with my old Nintendo powers.
Yep.
The fear of selling out, I guess, is real.
So you're a Patrick Duffy closet fan then, and have Man from Atlantis? Serious?
I don't know how they I didn't even know it was a TV series until like 2 years ago.
Really?
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I honestly, I think I bought like a random long box and they were just there.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
CJ. See that? He stopped his pull box, but his LCS still gives him a discount. Okay.
And that's customer loyalty. That's what you want.
Yeah.
If you have a good LCS, that stuff will happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just be honest with the owner.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're really, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I
Give me time.
All right. Well, I guess we put together a lot of different ideas for people, whether they're newbies or coming back into the hobby, or even looking to see, maybe they're sick of capes and we're looking for other things to do. And we give them a lot of, I think, research things. And I will put the links for some of the stuff that we showed in the description once this is over. But, why don't we, let's kind of wrap it up, I guess, guys. So is there anything, any last words anybody wants to bring out for these people that we're addressing this to?
Hey, I love the focus on it not being super expensive, of it being cheap, especially introduction. You know, one of the things I've used this, these Marvel, they call them essentials. They have them, they're just black and white. They're trade paperbacks to the early series. They have them Fantastic Four, Avengers. This one's Amazing Spider-Man. These are great, okay, to get people. They're cheap reads. They're in black and white. The originals were in color, but this is how I've read the early Spider-Man. And like I said, I've given these books to students, and I have a bunch of them. Every time I see them for cheap, I'll pick them up so I can give them to students. I've got a lot of kids learn how to read by doing this exact thing, reading these comic books. So, yeah, like so many cheap ways to get into the hobby. Just get your foot into it before you end up spending a whole lot of money that you might end up regretting.
Yep. I would say don't be afraid to, and once you start it, like I've come in and out of the hobby more than once over the course of my collecting, because life happens, things happen, you know, moves and finances and careers and kids and cats and dogs and raining frogs and whatever it is. Like, and some people think
only in Canada.
You know, if I get into this, I'm going to be stuck in it, and I don't want to put that much investment. You don't have to. As long as you use some common sense, just do it slow. If you have to back up, you can. There's nothing dishonorable about it, because we have all done it. We've all slowed down.
Next week is my annual trip to the Ollie's up in Bonita Springs, since there's no Ollie's by me in New York. So you'll see that. Let's see what I picked up next week at Ollie's.
There you go.
Nice.
And that is a good thing. They have some great graphic novels there sometimes, you know, and they had a lot of them, but a lot of them that I had read already, you know.
You're welcome, Joe. I think I'm the one who taught you about all of these.
You did. Yeah.
I take pride in it. Public service.
Yeah, for me, I want to follow Mark, because like I kind of am in that lull of kind of just pulling away a little bit from the hobby, just to kind of reset and do all of that. But I think one of the things, this used to be my mantra when I had a very active YouTube channel. I said this after every episode, and I think it still rings true. Like from my comic journey to yours, like make it your own. I missed that, Alan. Yeah, I feel like we're giving advice here, and it's great. But I also feel like the lessons you learn are also from each of one of your own experiences, right? So just go for it. If it works for you, you'll kind of re-navigate yourself. So these are all really good suggestions to kind of veer you towards the right path. But yeah, you got to make it your own sometimes. You'll find specific parts of the hobby you'll like. If you didn't like, you wouldn't find it unless you tried it out. So, and you know, that's my piece.
Look at us.
Look at us.
And I'm not CJ, look at me, but I'm saying, look at us. I mean, we got to know each other, and we all live in different cities and all that, you know. But the thing is, if you go to your LCS or you find pals, like I have my best friend John or whatever else, if you get a bunch of people together, and it could be virtual like we do, and you talk about comics, that's where you could learn about things too. I mean, that's part of it that we didn't talk a lot about, was just talking about them with your pals, you know. Getting a few people that like the same thing you do, for example.
I mean, if Chris Bigger and I can agree on something, Joe, then that says something, I think.
That's a tough one.
I guess for me it would be it's supposed to be fun, you know. It's life is just so hard at times where you want something to look forward to. And this could be it for you, you know, like, and just have fun with it. Like, don't let anybody tell you how to collect. Heed some advices, but ultimately just have fun. And once it stops being fun, just like take a break. You know, there's no shame in that. And you know, find other ways to make it fun, but just keep holding the funness of the hobby, and don't make it more than that. You know, because we need stuff to look forward to in life. So.
If it's not fun, then do something.
Yeah, it's not worth doing. Yeah, and then you can always come back.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a hobby. You can step away and come back anytime you want.
Yeah. The only other thing I would really add is that don't be afraid of missing out on the next big event or the next big crossover, the next big series, you know, chances are, especially if it's Marvel or DC, in 5 to 10 years, it'll be changed anyway. It'll be redacted or
Right.
redone or rebooted.
Recons and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can go in a lot of times, you know, just go right in again, and it's a whole nother, you know, universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Let me adjust what I said. Have fun, but be responsible. I guess. That's to go with what Phil just said.
Drink responsibly.
All right. I think this was a
Enough
great.
said.
Yeah, this was a great discussion, guys. We went longer than we usually do, you know, but I think it was so good. I was enjoying it, and that's great. So, let's see. I don't know. I mean, I mentioned that I'm going to have an Ollie's, my annual Ollie's thing. I picked up a couple of good books, I think, there, which I'll show you guys in the video next week. And I'm also working on a kind of a special video that's going to be, I'll probably do it put it out the week after. It'll be going up while I'm driving back to New York, you know, so we'll put it up beforehand for that particular instance with respect to that. So Phil, you're the only other guy here that has an active channel right now. So what do you got coming up?
Tomorrow morning, my live show, 11 a.m. Eastern. Last week, today live. I am bringing back, I used to do a show, 7-Minute Stories. I'm actually bringing it back as a segment on that show. And tomorrow's my first guest, Madam Stephanie. So she'll be joining me. And also, if you get on early enough, I'm going to have a brand new intro that, Joe, I think you might like. If you, the only clues I'll give is if you like, you know, if you're into Italian culture, and if you're a fan of the 90s band Jane's Addiction, you might be happy by this, or you might hate it. Who knows?
Well, Phil, I love your series on the Italian actors and actresses. Matter of fact, my son is a member of an Italian culture organization up in upstate. And I suggested that he show some of these to the guy and see if if they can get you up there to do a presentation on it.
Sure, there we go.
You know, I said maybe he can do put a little show up there with the stuff like that. So I don't know if I don't think anything ever come of that, you know. But I thought they for me being Italian, they were fantastic. I love watching.
I was contemplating trying to put them into like a just like some sort of collected book or something, and seeing if I could reproduce it and then give the proceeds to like my hometown does a Columbus Day parade or like an Italian heritage parade. I just haven't put anything together, you know, thought-wise with it yet. It's just kind of more of a passing idea at the moment.
Yeah, well, talk to Doug about how they print out their comic books and stuff like that, and maybe you could put it into some sort of a thing like that for sure.
Yeah. And then tomorrow night I'll be on Evil Mike's channel talking about Stephen King.
Yep, that's good. Yeah, and Brian was here too. So Brian has actually written a comic book, and he's doing a Kickstarter on it. So check out his channel or his IG because it looks kind of interesting. Yeah. It looks like it's a psychiatrist, I would say, for superheroes is the premise of it. So so take a look for that Kickstarter. And I don't think he's hearing it anyway. And he's on tomorrow morning also. Unfortunately I missed the Saturday morning things a lot of times because I got stuff to do.
No, he's not on tomorrow. He's on Sunday.
Oh, he's on Sunday?
Yeah, he's moving his show to Sundays.
Oh, well, then I'll probably miss it all the time then. All right, I didn't even know that because I missed this show the last few weeks because I had other stuff going on. Anybody else have anything else that's coming up for them that they'd like to announce?
Well, Joe, us DC Watch guys had something cooking. Yeah, it's in a slow cooker, but we got something cooking.
We got a couple of things cooking. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks to this month's comic book crowd, of course, Matt and Alan, the OGs that have been helping me out for 29 episodes. And we have Pretty Fly, who flew in late.
Sorry.
We have Phil, who couldn't find the link, but he found it eventually. And my compatriot there, Mark Andrews, who I always appreciate being.
That's the power of comics, Joe. No matter what, we'll make it.
And thanks to people who showed up. The chat, it was really fantastic. I think that kind of really makes it. Even Jackson Roykirk, is okay, with respect to that. So I think that one thing I did want to say is that next month, it's going to be on May 24th. And Roger of Metarog is going to be one of the guests, and he's come up with a pretty cool topic, I think. He's a Bronze Age guy. So we're going to be talking about Bronze Age limited series. So I think that's going to be kind of cool. I'm looking to see what I might have it. I'll be home then, so it'll be good. I'll be able to look through and see, because I did collect into the early Bronze Age and see what I might have with respect to that. So hopefully I got some books at home, but if not, we'll just we'll talk about it anyway. But that sounds like a really interesting one, and I'm glad that that Roger is going to be on. So it's going to be on May 24th, the next comic book crowd. The next Anachronic College of Comic Book Knowledge is going to be on, I think it's the 17th or 16th, I forget. But Brian LCS is going to be there. And of course, his topic is going to be Spider-Man, second Spider-Man topic we're going to have. So we have to come up with some, I have to talk to the professors and come up with some questions for him. And on the 31st, I think we're going to have the next Espresso mail call, if I got the Friday dates correct. But anyway,
Hope so.
that's what's coming up over the next month here in terms of live streams. We have some cool pre-recorded videos as well that I've set up for May. So hopefully you stick around. And again, if you have the wherewithal and you'd like to help out, $1.99, become a channel member and help us get some money to St. Jude's and the Talented Towers Foundation. So with that, let's see, anything else on the comment area here that we need to say? Oh, I just went dark. What happened here? Okay, hold on a second. All right, well, I guess with that, we'll say goodnight to everybody. Really appreciate you guys. All right, so please take care, and we'll see you again real soon. Good night, everybody.